important piece of that separates blockchain from, let's say, typical computing or servers, conventionally speaking, is the decentralized nature. So where you have, a centralized company like a Google or Alphabet or a Facebook, a lot of the giants today, right? And it started with AOL or whatever back in the day, but you have information that's centralized and essentially then controlled thus by the corporation owning that. And now when we get into data and the transfer of information and who's owning your information and advertisers and free email, right? The cost of your entire life of information. Blockchain is set up in a way that is, a public ledger essentially of that information, but rather than it being owned by one, individual party or group, it verifies, let's say, a transaction like a simple, I'm sending you $10.
Welcome to the Kooler Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Kuehlhorn, and I'm excited to have you join me as I interview community members and business leaders from the communities in which I live, work, and serve through my business Kooler Garage Doors. We're going to bring you highlights on characters in our communities. Why? Because community matters, and I want to know more about who is behind our business and leadership in order to understand and support the community fabric that our relationships make up. And collectively, we can build stronger communities that support our lifestyles, our youth, and our health.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Kooler Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Kuehlhorn. Today I'm sitting down with Chris Pederson. He's an entrepreneur. He's a owner of a family-owned events and rental service based out of Minneapolis or Medina, Minnesota. Been a part of renewable energy, and he's working on a development in Medina. Is that right? The reason we're talking today, we're actually beaming in from Indianapolis. So Chris and I have been attending Gary V's VCon, which is all about NFTs and Web 3.0 space, which is relatively new technology based on blockchain. So I'm going to be extracting some knowledge because I want listeners to understand a little bit more about what NFTs are. These are coming, and it's really interesting. Early adopters right now, but I think over time, we'll see this more and more. And we'll all have an understanding of what NFTs are in about 10 years, 5 years, maybe. Right. Chris, thanks for joining.
Well, thanks, Matt, for having me. And thanks for getting us down to VCon here. I think without you doing that, we might not be sitting in this space a couple blocks away from Lucas Oil Stadium. So that was exciting. And obviously, you and I met last year when you were in Minnesota attending VCon there, which I actually didn't attend, even though it was in my home state. It was really fun meeting your son and picking you guys up from US Bank Stadium.
Yeah. Had a thrilling bowling competition.
Yeah, you had to bring that up. Me bringing it up if you lost?
I don't know. Let's move on. So, we are literally blocks away from Lucas Oil Stadium where this entire event goes on. If you haven't been following or even know of Gary V, he's an individual that moved into this space a couple of years ago, and he launched his NFT project, V Friends, which this is a representation of the Prudent Polar Bear that my son and I bought together. And that's why we're here. I'm here more out of curiosity, but you're actually in the space. You've got a project going called Egonauts.
Yep. So our project is called Order of the Egonauts. We founded it in early 2022. So we've been going for just over a year. I had a little experience with Ethereum, some trading and some friends that were in the space. And over time, kind of made sense to try to, like you said, become an early adopter of, frankly, a technology that I didn't fully understand and still don't truly fully understand the implications of, but believe it's a space that's going to drive a lot of industries forward in ways beyond just the artwork that we're seeing right now.
Yeah.
With actually our development project. So when we founded Order of the Egonauts, the project, in a nutshell, is a tribute to the heroes of blockchain technology. So we create art based on influential figures in the space.
Yeah.
And those influential figures obviously have bios and backgrounds and their own life stories behind them, and we try to incorporate different pieces and traits in the art that reflect the lives of those. So we started with Vitalik Buterin, and we did CZ next, and then our series 3 was good old Elon Musk, and Gary Vee was actually our 4th series. And it's been a lot of fun because going through the project and coming up with some of these traits, I've actually got to learn a lot about these figures as well and about their backgrounds. And I think it's important that people start to know who these people are as people and individuals and entrepreneurs and pioneers. Honestly, in a lot of ways, the same way, maybe in the 80s with Paul Allen or, Bill Gates or Steve Jobs were at the forefront of something that a lot of people didn't understand then. And I feel as though blockchain doing something similar.
Hey everybody, this is Luke from Kooler Garage Doors. Just want to take a quick second to talk about our sponsor, Sommer Garage Door Openers. In our opinion, Sommers are the highest quality product on the market today. We recommend them for all of our residential garage door installs because of the variety of features they include, such as Wi-Fi connectivity and safety features such as a fixed chain, which moves along a secure rail to ensure your garage door opens quietly and safely. Click on the link in the description to learn more about Sommer Garage Door Openers.
That's right. I would agree with that. And I've heard it referenced, the blockchain era right now is similar to the internet of the 90s. Those very new people there was a mix of fear and excitement and just ignorance, not knowing. And it kind of formed and was iterated over the years into commonality of nowadays where we all know about the internet. So it's really interesting. Early space. I want to get into NFTs, break down blockchain a little bit for our listeners. Before I do that, Chris, I want to go through the normal Kooler Lifestyle piece. Can you give us a quick summary? Give us context. Where did you grow up? And I'm going to time you. I'm going to give you a couple minutes here.
Good idea.
Where did you grow up? And let's start there and then move forward.
Sure. So I grew up in Plymouth, Minnesota, suburb just west of Minneapolis, about 15, 20 minutes. Started working for the family equipment and event rental business when I was 11. I was very ineffective, but my dad said I had to work. And so I was working really at the party event rental stuff. So cleaning floors, but setting up tents, tables, chairs, stuff for people's outdoor events like graduation parties, weddings, corporate events. Did that all through high school as a summer job. After that, I went to graduated from University of Wisconsin-Madison. And I was a Badger. That was great experience. My degree was in communication arts, which honestly was a degree.
Yeah.
After that, I got into a startup in the sunglasses industry.
Yeah.
Selling primarily to the aviation pilots, aerobatic pilots, race pilots, we'll call it. Right. And then from there, went into renewable energy and actually co-founded a hydrokinetic turbine company called Verterra Energy. Still exists today. I'm no longer a part of the company, but I co-founded that with Ted Christopher, the inventor. He's doing really great. He's stuck with it for 15 years now. And they are on the prototypes now. Then I went into some solar as well. I kind of pivoted with the company, a Minnesota-based company. I love working with local companies called SolarPod. Their claim to fame was a technology that doesn't put holes in the roof. So the owner of the company is a engineer and developed a way to essentially put systems on roofs that don't put all the holes in, using a counterbalance over the gable of the roof. Did that for quite a while. And during that time also, I moved to Medina, Minnesota, where my wife and I started a family. My daughter is actually 7 now. She's here in the other roroom at VCon with us.
Yeah,
so that was
she's
fun.
been a treat to hang out with.
Well, it was I was inspired by you bringing your son Taj last year and having somebody, a young kid, I think he was 10 last year, attending an event like this, said, why can't I do that this year? So, so when Lexi was born, we built a house in a subdevelopment, and just so happened I was in the community where I was doing editing for the local magazine, and during that time, the the community was growing. It continues to grow. And so we started a magazine that focused on stories about the community by the community.
Yeah.
Hosted a lot of in-house events around town to bring sponsors, residents, business owners together. That still continues to exist today. We used to do it monthly, but after COVID hit, we dialed it way back, and now we're only doing it about twice a year.
Yeah. Let me pause you there. And I guess I'm curious, because I know that your development that's going on is very community-based as well. And it's intended to bring value into the community and be a hub of information, innovation, resource. And I'm curious, in referencing community, is this drive coming from you growing up? Is this coming from parents? Where does the community component that...
Sure, that's a great question. I've asked myself that sometimes as well. A lot of it, I think, comes from growing up in an area working for a small family business. It was founded in 1979. I was born in 81, so it's been there all my life. And when you're interacting with that type of retail business that's very front-facing, people are coming in and renting bobcats and stuff for their weddings and backyard work and moving, and you start to just, naturally develop relationships among a localized community. And on top of that, I've been a relatively social person my whole life. I really like meeting people. I like hearing their stories. I've always liked writing. So I think, over time, through being an event rental company where you're having a lot of parties and are in that space, and then, being in a community like Medina that I live in now, where it's 2.5 miles from where I work, and it just happens to be 100 feet from the site we're building this development. And so it's an idea I had for quite a while to build the venue piece, but really I was just seeing in our community, like a lot of communities, I think across America, suburbs especially, commercial development turns into a lot of national chains. Let's say, you get your insurance company, you get your bank on the corner, you get a lot of things that frankly might be making money for the people owning the property or have some sort of purpose for the companies that buy into that. It doesn't necessarily provide a lot of local recreational value, or at least nothing that, number one, keeps money in the community, because a lot of it is outside money coming in, like I said, change. And then the experience itself, you see, a very cookie cutter, strip mall with, a large big box as an anchor, or a grocery store or something. And we had a piece of property that happened to be in our family for 30 years. My dad and uncle owned it, and it was coincidentally within 100 feet, like I said, of the neighborhood we decided to build in. So this 18-acre property has been sitting there for a long time.
Yeah. This is good, and I want to tie this back into NFTs too. And so let's remove the veil of blockchain and NFTs real quick, because again, I think the NFT projects that I see being successful are about building community. So now I'm starting to see this thread, dude. And we met through Gathering the Kings, a mastermind, which is another form of community, right?
Yep. Very similar in many ways.
Yeah, it is very similar. In the NFT space, the V Friends, this is pulling in thousands of people into the Lucas Oil Stadium this weekend, and it's a community. And so here's how I explain blockchain. I'm going to test it with you. I don't think we need to get super technical with everybody, but for the listener, to understand blockchain, I have the analogy that it's very similar in a lot of ways to the internet, which means that it's a bunch of computers, servers, if you will, that are connected and talking to each other. The blockchain happens to be very similar servers and computers running on a specific code, if you will, but instead of the internet just passing information back and forth, these computers actually verify and check off transactions and information.
Yep, I think that's a good way to describe it. And I think an important piece of that separates blockchain from, let's say, typical computing or servers, conventionally speaking, is the decentralized nature. So where you have, a centralized company like a Google or Alphabet or a Facebook, a lot of the giants today, right? And it started with AOL or whatever back in the day, but you have information is centralized and essentially then controlled thus by the corporation owning that. And now when we get into data and the transfer of information and who's owning your information and advertisers and free email, right? The cost of your entire life of information. Blockchain is set up in a way that is, a public ledger essentially of that information, but rather than it being owned by one, individual party or group, it verifies, let's say, a transaction like a simple, I'm sending you $10.
Yeah.
Whereas a centralized bank would be required to say, my $10 is now in Matt's bank account and it's no longer in mine. So that bank says, yes, this is true. Well, with Bitcoin, which was really the first to break ground in the space, it was peer to peer without requiring a bank or a centralized, third party essentially to verify that.
Right.
Now they did that was through blockchain, and this idea that rather than having an individual bank looking through all these things, which obviously has been critical and important to, where we are today as a modern society, it's also come with it, a lot of constraints.
Yeah.
Those constraints around, centralized information and money has caused, number one, a lot of people to be kind of sidestepped or put on the fringe of let's say developing countries versus first world. But with blockchain and with Bitcoin in this example, you have, rather than that bank verifying, you have essentially you're running a very simple code. Actually, any computer can really run it, especially in the beginning. Now it requires a pretty high-end machine to verify this information, and they call it mining, right? So proof of work, meaning there's work being done that is validating that I gave you that $10. But rather than it being a bank, like a Wells Fargo, it is a group of computers operating essentially all over the world that are running this software.
That's right. And just to make a point there, to distill it, it's thousands of computers saying, yes, that transaction happened. And because of that, it gets decentralized, to use those words, and it is public, verified by thousands of computers. So it's very, very, if not impossible to hack. And therefore, it can be more trusted.
It can be more trusted, and I think, and it's an interesting term, they call it trustless verification, right? Where you're, rather than going to the Wells Fargo, you're essentially trusting the Bitcoin network as a pseudonymous. I hate using pseudonymous. It's an anonymous network of computers that you don't know who's verifying your transaction, but it doesn't really matter. It matters that, like you said, there's enough computers all saying that this is actually valid.
Yes.
And so long as you maintain, I guess over 50%, obviously you want to maintain higher, that there's not any funny business going on, that remains a credible, secure way of transferring it. And I think what's really cool about how they work this, Satoshi, we should say, the great god of crypto, he put together a system that incentivized people to not want to mess with this code, right?
Yeah.
Or to act maliciously against the better interest of saying that this was a valid transaction. So when that term mining comes out, as you're validating with your computer, you're essentially running a computer that, yes, it's using electricity, a lot of electricity to run those verifications. Your computer is now verifying those transactions, and you don't know who those transactions are, but you know that they're secure.
Yeah.
And you know that you don't need a third party to do that. Now, that was, R1, and then Vitalik Buterin and the second kind of gen of Bitcoin people kind of came along and said, let's, up this one better. Let's add another layer that doesn't just have to do with, let's say, financial.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And adding applications, and they call them dApps, right? And I believe Ethereum was the network that coined that, decentralized applications, right? So taking that layer and saying, okay, well, if I can do this with money, I can do this with social media. I can do this with pretty much everything you can do on the internet, but in the same decentralized manner using blockchain.
And I think that's the interesting piece. So, a lot of folks, I think, are going to hear blockchain and think Bitcoin and think money or funny money or whatever they want to think, right? However, the reality is that blockchain has been technology already in use for a long time, and it's been internalized. And so now it's starting to get a little bit more into the public arena. And yet so many transactions are already verified on a blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing really to do with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is just one version of this that has the lion's share of value to for exchange of money and currency.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be interesting to see where that goes. But then there's so many different coins and ways of putting value into, cryptocurrencies, but it's also a verified transaction that has almost nothing to do with dollars and cents on levels.
Absolutely. Right. And like you said, it's been around, blockchain has, and it's really the idea that you can use blockchain and essentially, how I like to visualize it. It's literally a piece of information that's put out there. So as I sent Matt that $10, there's a block that gets filled. And when that block is filled, it closes.
Yep.
It moves on to the next block.
Yep.
That block says that Chris gave that money to Matt. That exists forever in time.
That's right.
It's immutable.
That's right.
Right. So it doesn't stop. It's an infinite, ongoing blockchain. And, the blockchain likes to, rightfully so, brag that the blockchain network really hasn't been ever shut down since it began operating, I believe, in 2009, 2010.
Yeah.
Aside from maybe some issue around Mt. Gox, I think. But anyway, the nature of it is brilliant because it's not showing that I sent you $10. It's showing that my crypto wallet address, or we'll call it an email address, right, sent you that money, and I don't need to share if that was my address or not. It doesn't really matter so long as we both know that this person-to-person transaction took place. And that's what I think is one of the foundations of really blockchain, altogether, is this idea of, I hate to use the word libertarian because it has those connotations, but an individuality, or being able to essentially control your own destiny around money, specifically for, the case of Bitcoin, and not being relegated to, for example, a centralized government or a currency that could be devalued like they had in Argentina and a lot of other third world countries, developing countries, where Bitcoin is agnostic and it hasn't stopped and nobody owns it.
That's right. That's
and
right.
You take that and you start to add these other pieces into it, and there's plenty of bad actors, but at the end of the day, even with those bad actors, I think it's ironic when certain agencies say, well, it's used to fund terrorism, or it's like, well, the US dollars have been using to fund terrorism since the beginning of, right, or malicious activities. The only difference is you can't actually see where that bag of money came from.
That's right. That's the piece. Like, blockchain offers transparency.
It does. It offers transparency in a way that some people don't like, because they can't not always necessarily see who that was. They can't ascribe you to it. And they could. I mean, there's plenty of exchanges now that require that level of verification to know who it is.
Yeah.
And know your customer. But it's got the ability to do a lot that I think we haven't seen ever in the history of
Yeah, so certainly there's a lot of hype around NFTs, and you have the Order of Egonauts, which is an NFT project. And so an NFT, as I would explain it in as much layman terms as possible, is it's a collectible. It's actually NFT for non-fungible token, but it really is a digital collectible. So I have a digital version of this polar bear. It sits in my wallet. I can't necessarily, I could show it off and show it to you, but I just know that I have it and there's some value in it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on a utilitarian basis, I get access to VCon for 3 years. So my boy and I came last year, we came this year, we'll come next year. And there's really no ticket cost because I've already paid for the ticketing owning this.
Right.
Now I can also sell it, and it transfers on the blockchain. So it's verified, transparent. It's not a tangible thing that I can actually hold or destroy. It's a digital thing.
Right.
And there's some uniqueness to these NFTs. I think that there's a lot of hype right now and a lot of speculation that can occur, but there's also some realness, so that I see NFTs being the way that we purchase our event tickets in the very near future, if not already. Like, actually, we are already. I bought an NFT, I'm at an event. You're creating the Order of Egonauts, and my understanding is that holders at some point in time might have access to events at the community center that you're building.
Right. And that's exactly it. So Order of the Egonauts is a long-term project. A lot of these NFTs are quick up and down. They trade them quick. The utility might be access to some sort of a blockchain game. With us, we looked at it from a very long-term perspective. I like building community. I like the physical nature of things as well. Obviously, with Bitcoin and Ethereum, NFTs, the crypto space, there's a lot of virtual components to it. And, between Discord and Twitter and people being able to interact in these communities, trading NFTs, using them as profile pictures to kind of show, which NFT they own.
Yeah.
I think it is great. With a project like ours, what we've done is this development that we're building, which again, it's 100 feet across the street. We just got through our city approval. So final plat approval, we just received actually a month ago now from the city of Medina, which was a huge step. That was 2 years of work. And it's to build on this 18 acres, multiple sites. But the main site is a 32,000 square foot arts and entertainment venue. They'll have a conservatory, a full glass conservatory as part of it. Technologically very modern ballroom aspect, lodging 2 floors above it, 14 rooms, not huge, but boutique lodging, a boardwalk around it. And that facility will be home to Order of the Egonauts. And by home, I don't mean that this NFT project is related to owning a piece of this venue, but because myself and independent partners are working to build this venue, that venue will then be the place where we host annual and likely much more often smaller pop-up events as a membership utility to those in the Order of the Egonauts.
Yeah.
So a physical space using a virtual, technology, all the while driving people towards a building that I and my partners are designing with my background in the event rental space, with my closeness to the community and frankly care to build a development. Like I was saying, the ones I was talking about before, these conventional, strip malls that nobody really wants to go to, and Amazon is frankly destroying anyway right now, or I should say beating into submission. With this, not only is our building, but we're going to have an on-site childcare building, which will have, be run independently by an operator. We want to have a restaurant on site there. We want to have a, another mixed kind of use building, but really have this amenity rich, surrounded by a boardwalk, beautiful buildings, high value to the development itself, and really a place where community can go and gather and have a space that they actually enjoy coming to, and isn't just about the commercialization of how quick can we get people in and out of this space based on, the demographics of the area and whatever the developer and the brokers are deciding that is the fastest, quickest way to make a buck, and then move on to the next, cookie cutter and do another one.
Sure.
And with our project, I'm particularly excited with Order of the Egonauts because what we're finding, and it's taking time. It's not a cheap mint. It's, 1 ETH to mint. And what that does is it creates a level of commitment. And a barrier of entry. Because what we really are trying to attract, there's only a 1,212 supply total, and we haven't released them all yet, is that we want to get a group of people, like-minded enough individuals, but from diverse backgrounds, that care about community. They care about, building sustainable business models. We'll be incorporating renewables. Obviously, my background there is pushing me towards understanding that component and trying to incorporate those things. Creating events around education, excitement, entertainment around the blockchain space in general. Keynote speakers, in many ways similar to what BCon is, but on a much smaller scale and in a different environment.
Yeah.
And for many, different reasons that aren't always the same, I guess, as something like this. In many ways, it's a place for people to gather and frankly start to try to bring this idea of blockchain to a more local level. And in an area like Medina, it's a highly educated area. There's a lot of schools around it. That's starting to get integrated into schools. If we can be a hub, if we can have a space that we know through the Order of the Egonauts, even though it's not the primary use of the space, the venue, and this is a multi-million-dollar venue, we're not going to host Egonaut events there every single day and be able to sustain.
Yeah.
But the Egonauts, as it being the headquarters, me being a controlling interest and operator of the building, will allow us to use it, I believe, as a hub to drive education, awareness, advocacy around blockchain, around newer technology, even talking AI and how some of these technologies are going to have to integrate with, hydroponic, agriculture and conservatories.
Yeah.
The classroom, in medical, in renewable energy and sustainable architecture, and using that as a platform and a community with Order the Egonauts, where we start to attract those type of people that want to be a part of that community, that can interact obviously through Discord and through Twitter and through cell phone and whatever. I mean, I'm doxxed. I'm not part of the group that likes to hide as the founder, but it is a longer term project, and we, our facility likely won't be open until 2025. Yeah, when it is, we will have done it the right way. Yeah, and that's where I feel a lot of confidence in the project, is just, and it's really setting those expectations, I think. And that was one mistake I personally made at the beginning, was thinking that we could do these things faster than we could.
Sure.
And now we're being seen as a project that is actually continuing to do what they say they're going to do. And if anybody who comes to Medina, I'll take them to the site. I'm 100 feet from the project. My wife and children live by it. Family business is down the road. I run the local magazine. There's a lot more riding on this project and getting all the way to the finish line and making this the way we want it to, than just the NFT.
Yeah. And you bring out a couple of things. I want to make some points, and then we'll start wrapping up, because I know we could talk forever on this and just getting you going, man.
Yeah.
The pieces to note for the listeners are, NFTs right now are new, and there's some hype, and there can be some bubbles. And I think if anybody's really curious about it, go do some homework, do at least 10, 20 hours researching NFTs, different projects, and then see what's underneath. So there's going to be artwork, there's going to be utility, there's a collectability, and there's a utilitarian component to an NFT. There's lots of hype, and like you mentioned, there's projects that bubble up just for the flip. They're trying to make some quick coins and flip out artwork, and then there's some real collectible style artwork of real artists that are in for the long haul. There's also real projects that, like the Order Egonauts, are in for the long haul, and they're going to come with some utilitarian. I think the artwork is super creative as well. So it's a combo, right? And I think that's an important piece. So if this is new, go do some homework and then really see what's underneath of any project before truly investing in anything.
100%. I mean, that's the best advice anyone can give in NFTs, is do the research, do the homework. Yeah. If your buddy tells you this is going to go up big, he is either A, on the inside of that and is part of the pump, and an artificial one where the goal is to, frankly, leave somebody else holding the last bag.
Yep.
Or they're ignorant and believe that they actually know more than everybody else, and that somehow this project is going to be huge because they said so.
Yeah.
If they've done the research, maybe they can confidently say that, but do it yourself, because I found most of the time, especially in a space moving this fast in a society that has the attention span, of a mouse, that you want to really take the time yourself if you want to get in this space, because it can be dangerous, and people have lost a lot of money and done some pretty foolish things, and frankly, it's created a negative aura around the space, especially in the public image, that these NFTs and crypto are this dark society of scammers, where there's plenty of those there. But
the point I want to make on this is that the projects that attract me, at any rate, are because they build community.
Mm-hmm.
And when we look at it that way, sure, I could consider myself invested, but I'm not in it necessarily for a return, although I kind of am, but it's decades.
Yep.
If it's going to play, it's going to be decades. The more important piece is that I'm collecting these items that really start becoming or defining my identity. like who I stand for.
Yep.
I stand for community, innovation, disruption for the greater good, right? And so now I'm starting to collect things just like I do in my house. And this is probably the coolest thing. So, as a 46-year-old, I did not grow up playing the games my kids grew up playing.
Mm-hmm.
They grew up things. So they already have this understanding of collectibles. They put stuff in the backpacks of their video games. And now as this generation comes into the workforce, it's kind of normal to collect digital items, right? And that's why the NFT pops up and is so applicable, because not only is it a collectible that young people already know and have done, but now it's a utilitarian piece.
It's got exactly. No, it's come so far. I mean, Diablo, was a computer game back in the day. I remember at an old elementary school buddy who actually would, high school at the time, but would sell these rare items that he would find in the game to people.
That's right.
And I was are you kidding? You're selling this sword that you found that anybody could go and find for $100?
Yeah.
And then you see now, and it's like, well, kids will go and buy skins for Fortnite, and they'll spend hundreds and thousands of dollars on literally just pixel changes.
That's right.
That or some sort of attribute, but it's absolutely that, and that's where I think NFTs, like you're saying, the utility is a really fun thing to bring in and to start to see. And even with us, like the community, one quick example I'll give is even in the last couple of months, one of the holders of the Egonaut, he owns a local board game company, and it's actually a pretty large board game company. And he understands game theory and balancing of games, and he's really been intrigued by NFTs. They're based out of Plymouth. They have 25 employees, but nobody in there knows how to write Solidity code for an Ethereum, smart contract.
Yeah.
Well, guess who the owner of the Egonauts has? We've got a guy who's amazing at it, and he's part of our team. And now they're talking to each other. Is that going to benefit in order the Egonauts? Doesn't really matter. It already is, because they're already talking. They're already connecting. I know now that that Off-Grid, and Due Dunancy here are going to likely develop a relationship and work on things outside of this that is going to benefit their own interests, but it's going to all have rooted in order the Egonauts. And like you brought up, gathering the kings, mastermind. Yeah, it's the same concept of really bringing these good people together, and you all rally around the, maybe a centralized impetus, but you bring the right people together, and the sum of all parts grows.
Yeah, and that's awesome. Hopefully for the listeners, we get a little bit of understanding and break it down so it's not so far out. Like, blockchain is here. You're already engaging it, whether you know it or not. NFTs are around community building primarily, I think.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And it's not an investment flip. I would not recommend that. And if this is all new to you, go do some work, because I think in the future, brands, businesses, companies, they're all going to have NFTs, just like they all have websites. But just like in the early 90s, they didn't all have websites, and there was some fear, confusion, and curiosity at the same time. So this is just an early time for this entire space. Chris, I really appreciate kind of breaking it down. How do people reach out to you? How do we learn more about the Order of Egonauts, or even this community development that you've got going on?
Sure. So the best way would probably be to start following us on Twitter. That's at Egonauts NFT. And then the development, if you own an Egonaut, you pop into our Discord, you can start to communicate that way. And with the development, follow us on Twitter, send a message on there. I might even, give out my cell phone, and I'll give a phone call, and we can talk about the developments. But or if you want to take the time, like honestly, a lot of people have started to do with our project because they want to do the due diligence you talk about. They go and you look on the city's website, and it's all there. Civil plans. It's like these are real things that are happening, and so the site is off of Highway 55, 20 miles west of Minneapolis.
Yeah. And
it's on the north side of the highway, and it's on 18 acres, 12 of which are wetland, and the rest we're building on. And it's going to be beautiful, and people will start to see it here soon enough.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I really appreciate your time. I know they're about to open up the stage at Lucas Oil, and we should walk a couple blocks and get back into the mix.
We should. We got to get back in there. Well, thanks again, Matt, for having me. It was nice to do this, especially at a place like this where there's a memorable connection that comes with doing it in a different place during this time.
Yeah, there's only been just a small handful of live podcasts that we've done for Kooler Lifestyle. So this is
live.
Really fun.
Okay.
Not in the moment live, but you and I are sitting here versus you being in Medina. I'm in Colorado.
Yeah.
So appreciate you, man.
Well, appreciate you too, Paul. Talk soon. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to the Kooler Lifestyle Podcast. We count on your subscriptions, your likes, your shares, and I encourage you to do that now. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe, lower right-hand button. If you're on audio, download this, share it, and we look forward to having you on the next one.